Back in 1998, a slightly madcap engineering nut called Robert Llewellyn hit our UK television screens as the host of a new format show that had never been tried before. If you're of a certain age, you will no doubt remember it. It was called Scrapheap Challenge, and each week it brought together two competing teams of engineers, scientists and general machine tinkering enthusiasts in a scrapyard and gave them 10 hours to build a working machine or device to a specific brief, using only the spare parts and materials they found around them. That brief could be anything from a medieval trebuchet to a car or a boat, or even a submarine or flying machine. It was a brilliant format that taught a whole generation of budding engineers that mechanical creativity and problem solving could be a lot of fun. And the American spin-off, Junkyard Wars, even got a couple of Emmy nominations. Some say it was largely responsible for spawning the maker movement, a repair and recycle culture that emphasises creativity, hands-on building and sharing knowledge in areas like woodworking, metalwork, electronics and robotics, 3D printing and digital fabrication, and even coding, engineering and prototyping, always with a focus on upcycling and reusing materials with a blend of traditional craftsmanship and modern technology. I would argue it was well ahead of its time, and that without it, we may not have seen other hit series like Mythbusters and American Pickers. Anyway, why am I blithering on about it today? Well, because upcycling and recycling is having a bit of resurgence right now, isn't it? As we grapple with the limited resources our planet has to offer and try to navigate towards a bit more of a circular economy where we don't just buy cheap throwaway products with built-in obsolescence, but instead learn to look after stuff a bit more carefully, find out how it all works so we can fix it if it breaks, and ultimately keep it out of the dreaded landfill. And now Robert Llewellyn and his amazing colleagues at the Fully Charged and Everything Electric YouTube channels are bringing the Scrapheap Challenge format back, but with a very specific 21st century twist. So I thought I'd catch up with Robert himself to find out all about it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Hello and welcome to Just Have a Think. Before we get stuck in, it's time for a shameless plug on behalf of my good friends over at the Fully Charged and Everything Electric channels. I'm delighted to say that they've invited me back to be a moderator for several of the discussion panels at the Everything Electric live show being held at XL London from Wednesday the 16th to Friday the 18th of April. All the usual attractions will be there, from home energy generation and storage solutions right through to the latest EV models and electric commercial vehicles. Plus there's loads of fun stuff to keep the kids occupied. Ticket prices have been slashed this year as well to make the event as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. And if you use the Just Have a Think discount code at the bottom of the screen now, you'll get an extra 20% off that already reduced price. Absolute bargain. So follow the link in the description to the Everything Electric tickets sales page, pop the dates in your diary, and I look forward to seeing you there. Right, Mr. Llewellyn, nice to see you. It looks like you're still down there in Australia. And of course, for those people listening and watching that don't know, you're down there predominantly because of the Everything Electric live show in Sydney. So I've heard rave reviews about that. How did it all go?
It was truly remarkable. So every time I'm still not there, I still can't be confident about the live shows. I still think no one's going to come to everyone we do. And I mean, I think some of the sort of background stuff is that, you know, there were 35 car makers with cars on display and or test drives. We've never had that many anywhere. Not in. So I think at Farnborough, which is our biggest show generally, is probably 15 to 20. It's in that. So to have 35, and they were, mostly Chinese companies, most of which you wouldn't see in the UK yet, but a lot of which you will see soon. They are coming. You know.
Wow. It's exciting stuff, and it's the next stage on your journey as a sort of a pioneer and leader in this field. And the reason I say that is because I'm going back now. We're going to talk about something that you did years and years ago when I was a young man. When I was a young man in the sort of 80s, I first watched you as Crichton in Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
Those of a certain age will remember you all made up as a robot, and then and so I suppose. I've never had this conversation with you, although we know each other well now. You must have started out as an actor or got into acting, but then you went into Scrapheap Challenge. Were you always a tech head first and an actor second?
Yeah, no, I was. I mean, I think it was, it was always in the background. And what I realised was I was not good at being an engineer, but I loved it. And then, long story, but eventually I wrote a play that was at the Edinburgh Festival in 1988, and the producer of Red Dwarf came to see that, who I knew from other work. And he said, "Do you want to be in this sitcom as a robot?" And I said, "No, I'm too busy with my own projects." What an absolute doofus. And thankfully, he was very patient and understanding. And so I met the writers, and then I got on really well with the writers, and it was what an amazing job. I mean, it's been an incredible privilege to be on that show.
Yeah. It's been an enduring success for sure. But so that, I suppose, that got you your television legs going, and you got your knowledge of television. And did Scrapheap Challenge come? Was that kind of a concept that you thought up and talked to television producers about? Or?
No, not at all. It's very much. It was very much the idea of an extraordinary woman called Kathy Rogers, who I've actually interviewed quite recently, who trained as a doctor with enormous support from her dad, and then the day after she qualified as a GP, she rang her dad and said, "I don't want to be a doctor."
Oh my God!
I'm going to work in the telly. Yeah, that was his response. But so she had made a couple of medical documentaries, and she's a very bright woman. But she went to see Apollo 13, the movie, and then had this sort of inspiration of that, of like, what happens if we had a team of engineers on the ground and they had to make something with instructions from a remote place, from an engineer which is what happened on Apollo 13. I mean, there were the engineers on the ground who had everything that they had on board Apollo 13, and they made oxygen scrubbers out of toilet roll holders and tubes and bits of old T-shirt. So that was the original idea, and then it grew and grew. And my involvement was behind the scenes, but I got talked into appearing on Scrapheap. I thought, well, it won't run. We'll do one series and it'll be forgotten. And that was life changing, and it was a real jolt for me. So the show was a great success.
So for people the unlikely people who've watching this who've never seen it, just give us an idea of how it worked then.
Yeah, so it was what it evolved into. It was a challenge show where two teams they had to be competent, mechanical engineers, would compete, and we would give them really good tools, a quad bike and a trailer, and a massive scrapyard full of junk. And it was they were for real. They were real scrapyards with stuff in that we had no idea what was in there. It was massive piles of discarded, everything. I mean, obviously there were a lot of cars, but there were washing machines and tumble dryers and, mechanical engineering bits of lathes. But then they had a genuine 10-hour period to build that machine, whatever it was. And what we would always do is we'd find, say, a team from Jaguar Land Rover who were brilliant at making cars. That's their bread and butter. Yeah, and we'd get them to make a boat or a digger. Right. They wouldn't make a car. We wouldn't ever let them make a car.
Too easy.
So it's too easy for them, and they were up for. And I mean, what the level of skill of the engineers we met on that show, that they had 10 hours because of the budget, because we couldn't afford to run the cameras and all the camera crews, really big crew filming it for longer. So they had to. So the pressure was on them to complete the task in 10 hours, which 10 hours sounds like quite a long time, but if you're building something from scratch with an engine and a transmission system and wheels and a digger arm and a scraper bucket, or who knows what, it's a big ask. So
it's only just over a day's work, isn't it?
Yeah. They were extraordinary. I mean, it was a real privilege to see what they would do, and how they would do it.
And so, I mean, coming up to date, because I mean, it's still incredibly relevant, even though it's not running at the moment. It's an incredibly relevant format for today. We've got this. Everyone's talking about the circular economy on one hand, but then on the other hand, we've seen this sort of regressive push by the manufacturers of all sorts of goods to build in, built-in obsolescence and flimsy stuff and plastic and batteries that are bonded to phones, so you can't replace the battery. Yeah. So it's like it feels like we've got two sort of put things that are pulling against each other. Everyone wants to be, or a lot of people want to get remake and renew and recycle in a circular economy, and we're not educated, or the manufacturers, at least until recently, don't appear to be getting with the program. Is that what you're sensing from your work on Everything Electric and the Fully Charged show? Really,
I mean, that's such a complicated debate, because in some ways it's the efficiency of manufacturing. So they're making unit. The motor drive unit is made and it gets slotted in by a robot and it all bolts in together. And the same as you're saying with battery packs and things like that, how complicated that is. And I think, in a sense, the mechanical joy that some people got out of an internal combustion engine that broke down all the time. I mean, there's a really important aspect to them. Why were you always tinkering with internal combustion engines? Because they were rubbish and they were really unreliable and they broke down constantly. And I mean, I've now driven electric cars. I've never had an electric car have a mechanical fault. I've had punctures, but they just
there's nothing to go wrong, is there?
There's nothing to go wrong. Yeah,
no,
I mean, you can run out. I suppose I've done that once, which was really boring because I was filming it and it took forever. But, that's, other than that, there's nothing. Whereas, I mean, all I remember is driving along and hearing, and it stopped. And you'd hear bits of metal drop out the bottom.
Yeah. So, in a sense, I suppose, the internal combustion engine motor car and all engineering projects, really, they do, in fairness to them, I suppose the reason they've been so successful is because they appeal to some kind of intrinsic human desire to tinker. And overcome and succeed and perhaps that's where the die-hard petrol heads we won't name them but we know who they are. That's one of the reasons they sort of rail against this newfangled electric vehicle, because there's nothing for them to really fix on it, and therefore they can't prove how clever they are and do their tinkering stuff.
But I mean, in a sense, that only applies to what we would now designate classic cars. I mean, a modern petrol car, even the most avid tinkerer wouldn't. You'd have to strip so much stuff out. It's all electronic. There's no. I mean, if you think of the crudity and simplicity of a carburettor, I understood how a carburettor, where there's a float and it sucks air in and it goes in. Now it's an electronic fuel injection, which needs a laptop and a degree in software engineering. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's where the synergy lies. I think because if you can find a way of embracing and enhancing that human ingenuity and desire to tinker, but with modern appliances that are predominantly electrical, then building that circular economy by getting the manufacturers to make things more repairable. I did see that. I think the EU have got something called is it right to repair law?
Yes,
and I think Apple now do a self-repair kit. I think Samsung do as well. So they're sort of getting there a little bit. So so they're sort of opening up to the idea that people want to look after their products and not just chuck them away after 2 years and buy the newest phone. They want to get a decent phone and maybe have upgrades that they can put in. So I see that as it's maybe a sort of a win-win situation, if you like. So that the manufacturers providing things that we can tinker with. So that's addressing the need to tinker. Plus, we've got the circular economy of things staying in the economy longer. So then you've got this new concept, which I think is very exciting. So you've sort of updated the Scrapheap and changed the name and changed the format slightly. So tell us all about it.
I think it is going to be slightly different because we can't really impose the time limit, because we just don't have the budget for that and the structure of it. But so the idea with what we're going to do now is we've titled it Zapheap Challenge. So we will use. What I actually think will happen is one of the teams will build 2 identical battery boxes. They don't need to be very big. They can be 3 or 4 kilowatt hours. The machines are only going to run for a few minutes, so it's not. They don't need a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. But so that we can have in a sense, like the fuel. So there's a safe box that you can drop over, and it doesn't, all that stuff. Properly made, but then everything else we want to strip out of old electric cars, use the motors, use the drive systems, use the software. So we've got these 2 brilliant teams, one in the UK in Wales, Richard Morgan and Electric Classic Cars, and then in Amsterdam there is Annie Kloppenberg and his team from New Electric. Their speciality is slightly different, but really bright guys with electronics and with batteries and with converting things, and they've got those teams. So that's the 2 teams. So we've got a Dutch team and a British team, and I don't know what we're going to make yet. That hasn't been decided. I've suggested a few things, but I think the idea is it's not going to be a car. It'll be a machine that does something.
It's very interesting about it's very interesting to talk about the software and I suppose coding and things
Yes.
like that. One of my nephews is a very, very accomplished coder. He does it for a
Right.
living. And you watch him
Yeah.
doing his laptop with a screen that's got writing that's so small I can't
So
actually
small.
see. And he's sitting here about 4 feet away and he's reading it perfectly. But they tap away, they type at the speed you and I would speak. And
yeah.
so it sounds like it's very much embracing, where we are in the modern world with that and that generation, and obviously there are plenty of people who are generation who can do coding. Robert, I'm not being ageist.
Yes, no, not at all.
Much prevalent in folks of my nephews, in their 20s and 30s. So that PEEP challenge is going to embrace all of that as well as the mechanical side. It's going to embrace the modern type of software and
absolutely
coding.
No, that's a really critical point in it. And I mean, I don't think it's going to be overly complex, but clearly, if you've got a battery management system and a software system that operates the motor, is the motor control, and you're not using the motor in a car, you're going to have to rewrite the software so that it doesn't, so that you can control the motor in a different way. So those sort of things will be really very much part of the show. But then I think the other big difference to the way we did the old TV series is we're planning, and I think it's all going to be able to happen, to do the test of the machines in front of an audience at the big Farnborough event in October, which would be, it always raises the stakes a bit if there's a live audience. So I'm really hoping we can. But I mean, I think it would be great fun to do, and I think certainly those teams would really be up for it. It would be great fun to be able to do that.
So brass tacks then. Let's get to some brass tacks, Robert. The plan is, as I understand it, I mean, ideally, we'd like to see this on network television, like Scrapheap Challenge was, because that'd be wonderful. But to get people interested in making the show, you've got to produce a pilot episode. Is that? Am I understanding that right?
Yes, that's right. And in a sense, it will be a pilot. It will be a sort of pilot episode that we put out on the channel and everything like that. But I think I think we're in a very different world now to even when Scrapheap was made. I mean, the last one of those was made in 2007, so it's quite a while ago now.
Yeah.
But there was, people watch broadcast television. People watch television. Young people watch television in 2007, and they kind of don't. And in a way, I know from having the privilege of seeing the figures of Scrapheap, which was a successful show. Channel 4 were very proud of it, and rightly so. We've had episodes on Fully Charged Show on YouTube that have had more people watch. Yeah. So then you go, well, that's weird, because then, and you're the same. I mean, and a lot of the people we've spoken to with YouTube channels, you just go, well, no BBC channels ever had that many views. I mean,
no.
I mean, Colin Furze. Not that I'm jealous and bitter.
Not at all. No. But he does. He does dismantle his whole house and build an underground car park. So I mean, you and I don't quite do that. Let's face it.
But I mean, he does. He's got viewing figures that a big commercial channel would murder for. I mean,
absolutely, millions and millions of views. In terms of getting the pilot episode up and running, that's where we need some help from a Kickstarter campaign, as far as I understand, because that's not a cheap thing to do by the sound of it. It's a lot of logistics and outside broadcasts and all sorts.
Yeah, it's kind of crew. It's because we've got a location to film it in. So we've got two amazing workshops that we've got tools and we've got all that stuff. I mean, we need as much help as we can possibly get to do it. So we would need. We're operating with 4 people, camera crew and editors, and we need probably 10 on each team to make it work. So we need hugely more people involved, and we need dedicated sound engineers, because that's complicated, because you've got everybody mic'd up and you need to be able to hear them while they're working and all that stuff.
So the Kickstarter, it's on. Obviously there'll be a link on screen, and we'll leave it in the show notes as well, of where people can go to look at that Kickstarter campaign. And I've gone it, and I had a look at it, and it's not just chucking you £5 or £10 or whatever it is, or $20 or whatever people can afford, but there's bits and bobs on there that you can get. I've ordered myself a Zapheap cap, baseball cap,
good.
For example.
Actually, I've got a Zapheap cap and I'm not wearing it. I should have worn it, but it's too hot.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, did we say you were down in Australia having a horrible time in the sunshine, Robert?
Awful.
Yeah, thanks for reminding
People
us.
don't know how uncomfortable it is when you're this hot.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, terrible. Yeah. So there's perks and things, and I think there's T-shirts and all sorts that people can get. Yeah. So I essentially, I think what I'm understanding is that we are basically saying to everyone watching, if you don't mind, go and have a look at the Kickstarter. I think this is an absolutely fabulous project. I loved watching Scrapheap Challenge when I was a younger man. It was just madcap. You were brilliantly madcap in it, and with your crazy, leather gear on and your goggles and everything. It was brilliant. And I think I think that's something that could inject a bit of the joy back into the modern world. God knows there's enough bloody doom and gloom around at the moment. And Scrapheap Challenge was a joyful thing to watch. It was great fun, bit wacky, but showed human ingenuity, and I think genuinely was inspirational. I'm sure it led to a lot of young people going into a career in engineering and what have you. And we need a bit more of that in these days, which is why I'm a very big advocate of this. I think it's a wonderful idea, and if people can support it, then I think for whatever they can afford, £5 or £10 or whatever, it's going to make a difference. And are we going to get? Are you staying in Australia now, Robert, or are we going to get you back for Everything Electric London?
I leave the day after tomorrow, so I'm on my way back home. Yes, I've been here a long time, and it's been a great privilege. We filmed a lot of stuff here. We have been to see
We've started to see some of the videos. Brilliant. All right, well, so I'll see you at Everything Electric London on the 16th, 17th, and 18th of April. Looking forward to seeing you there.
No, I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah.
And hopefully that'll be a successful. It sounds like that's going to be a pretty big one as well.
I think it's going to be quite big. Yeah. And there's I know there's a lot of cars that will be effectively unveiled there, which is a new thing that I never expected us to be able to do. But that is starting to happen a lot in Sydney. A lot of cars were sort of launched at the event. Makes sense.
It does. It's got clout. Everyone talks about it, Robert. I don't want to float your boat too much, or blow your trumpet or whatever the phrase is. But everyone talks about it as the event that you need to be at. Everything Electric is it. So well done to you and Dan and all the people.
Yes, exactly. There's an amazing team that put it all together. I have less and less to do with it. Basically, it's out of choice. Can we keep Robert well away from the organising? Otherwise, it'll be absolute chaos. So I turn up on the day and do my job. But yes, I don't organise it. No.
Wonderful.
Great
well,
stuff.
Look, have a safe trip back.
Thank you.
From Australia, and thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate that. And,
no, it's my pleasure.
I look forward to seeing you at Everything Electric, and all power to your elbow, Robert. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Dave. All right, thanks a lot.
Cheers. That's it for this week. Thanks, as always, to the amazing folks over at Patreon who help keep the lights on round here, and many of whom have already chucked a bit of wonga into the Zapheap Kickstarter. Please do jump over to the Kickstarter page if you'd like to see Zapheap become a reality and you feel you could spare a few dollars to make it happen. If you're in the UK, then don't forget to visit the Everything Electric London website to check out what's on and get your discounted tickets using the Just Have a Think code. And of course, you can really hugely support the channel completely for free simply by hitting subscribe on the YouTube channel and clicking on all notifications to help us get noticed by the YouTube algorithm so that you get to see more videos like this each week. That's just a couple of clicks away, either down there somewhere or on that icon there. Most important of all though, thanks very much for watching. Have a great week, and remember to just have a think. See you next week.